Hey everybody, welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into the world of cloud developers.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah, it is. It's a really fascinating area, I think, especially since cloud computing is so prevalent these days. You know, businesses relying more and more on digital tools and solutions. So
Absolutely.
it's a hot topic, and it's one that we've gotten a lot of questions about. So we're going to try to break down exactly what a cloud developer does, what kind of skills you'd need if you want to become one, and why they're so in demand. Our source material today is a document that we found called What Does a Cloud Developer Do?
Okay.
So to kick things off, I'm just going to come right out and ask you, what exactly is a cloud developer?
Well, a cloud developer is basically a software engineer, but they specialize in building and managing applications that are specifically designed for cloud environments.
Okay.
So you're thinking about AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. These are all like the platforms where they kind of live and breathe.
So they're building apps, but how is that different than just like regular software development?
Right. So traditional software development, it's typically focused on building applications that run on like a single server or a very controlled environment. Whereas cloud development, it's all about taking advantage of like the unique characteristics of the cloud. So things like flexibility, scalability, on-demand resources, and then being able to handle like huge amounts of traffic and data, all of that.
So it's got to be able to grow with the business.
Exactly.
Interesting. Okay, so let's dig into the document a little bit here.
Yeah.
It outlines some of the key roles and responsibilities of a cloud developer. The first one that jumps out is designing cloud-based applications. So what makes that different than designing just a regular app?
Yeah. So when you're designing applications for the cloud, you have to really think about things like distributed systems. So instead of your application running on a single server, it might be spread out across multiple servers in different locations. So you have to consider things like how to ensure that your data is consistent across all these different servers, how to manage communication between them, and then also how to make sure that the whole system is resilient, so that if one server fails, the application can keep running.
Because it's like a network, a web almost.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like a complex ecosystem that you have to design and manage.
So you're not just like coding an app, you're like building an entire ecosystem.
Exactly.
Okay. Wow. So then there's this other responsibility that's listed here, developing and deploying scalable solutions. That makes sense. The cloud is supposed to be scalable. So
Right.
can you break that down a little bit? Like,
Yeah.
How do cloud developers actually make these solutions scalable?
Yeah, so they're using a lot of different tools and services that are provided by these cloud platforms, like I was mentioning earlier, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. They all have their own set of tools, and a big part of it is using things like containerization platforms like Docker, and then orchestration tools like Kubernetes, which basically allow you to like package your application up into these little containers and then deploy them across a whole bunch of servers, and then Kubernetes will manage all of that for you. So it can scale up, it can scale down, it can make sure that if one server fails, another one takes over.
Wow. Okay. So it's like this whole automated system.
Yeah, a lot of it is about automation.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got the design, the deployment, but then what about security? I mean, security's got to be a huge concern in the cloud. The document mentions ensuring cloud security and compliance. What role do cloud developers play in that?
Yeah, security is absolutely crucial, and it's something that cloud developers need to be thinking about at every stage of the development process. So from the very beginning, when they're designing the application, they need to be thinking about how to protect sensitive data. They need to be thinking about how to control access to the application. And then they need to be implementing security measures throughout the development process. So things like encryption, using firewalls, using intrusion detection systems, all of that stuff.
So it's not just about building it and forgetting it.
No, definitely not. It's an ongoing process.
You have to be constantly vigilant.
Exactly, because the threat landscape is constantly evolving.
And the bad guys are always trying to find a way in.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay, so it's like a constant cat and mouse game almost.
It can feel like that sometimes, yeah.
Okay, so they're building these secure applications, but then they also have to keep them running smoothly, right? The document mentions monitoring and optimizing cloud performance. So what does that involve?
So cloud developers are using a lot of different monitoring tools to track the performance of their applications and then make adjustments as needed. So they might be looking at things like server load, response times error rates, and then using that data to try to optimize the application so that it's running as efficiently as possible and meeting those user expectations.
So it's like they're constantly tweaking and refining.
Exactly, yeah. It's an iterative process.
That makes sense. Okay, now this next one's interesting. Collaborating with DevOps teams. We hear a lot about DevOps these days, but
Yeah.
how does a cloud developer fit into that picture?
So DevOps is all about like breaking down the silos between development and operations. And cloud developers often work very closely with DevOps engineers to automate a lot of the tasks that are involved in like deploying and managing cloud applications. So they might be working together on things like CI/CD pipelines, so continuous integration, continuous delivery, which allows them to like push out new code changes very quickly and efficiently.
So it's the team effort.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very collaborative environment.
Okay, that's super interesting. So we've talked about now let's talk about the how. What kind of skills do you actually need to become a cloud developer? We'll dive into that after the break. All right, so we're back and we're ready to talk about the skills you need to become a cloud developer.
All right, let's get into it.
It's like the toolkit. What are the tools of the trade? So the document mentions a few key areas, starting with proficiency in cloud platforms. What exactly does that mean?
So when we talk about proficiency in cloud platforms, we're talking about the big three: AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. And it means you're not just like familiar with them, how to really use them.
Okay.
You understand the core services they offer, how they work together.
So give me an example.
Like Amazon S3, for instance.
Okay.
It's like a massive hard drive in the cloud. You can store tons of data there.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
But a cloud developer needs to know how to not just store data, but manage it, secure it. How to integrate it into applications, make it work for their specific needs.
So it's like having a toolbox full of powerful tools. You got to know which tool to use for which job.
Right.
Okay, so next up we have programming skills. The document specifically mentions Python, Java, and Go. What's so special about those languages?
Well, these are kind of the go-to languages for cloud development these days. They each have their own strengths. Python, for example, is known for being really readable.
Okay.
Which is great when you're working on big projects with teams, and it's got tons of libraries that are specifically designed for cloud tasks.
So it's kind of like the Swiss Army knife of cloud development.
Yeah, I like that analogy. It can do a lot.
Cool. What about Java?
Java's a workhorse. It's been around forever, known for being super reliable, and that's why it's used for a lot of those big enterprise applications. The ones that can't afford to crash.
Right. Makes sense. And then there's Go. That one's a little newer on the scene, right?
Yeah, it is, but it's gaining popularity super fast because it's designed to handle a lot of tasks at once.
Okay.
Which is perfect for the cloud, where you often have a ton of users accessing an application all at the same time.
Makes sense. So it's like the multitasker of the group.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got the platforms, we've got the languages. What about this knowledge of DevOps practices? Now, we've talked about DevOps a little bit already, but why is it so important for aspiring cloud developers to understand this stuff?
Because DevOps is all about making the development process smoother and more efficient.
Right.
It's about breaking down those walls between the developers and the operations folks.
So instead of like throwing code over the wall and hoping for the best,
exactly,
you're working together as a team.
Right, and that means things like using CI/CD pipelines to automate testing and deployment, and managing infrastructure as code so everything is repeatable and scalable.
Okay, so it's like streamlining the whole process.
Precisely.
Cool. All right, then we have this big one, expertise in cloud security.
Big one, yeah.
We talked about how important security is, but what does it actually mean to have expertise in cloud security?
It means you understand the unique challenges of securing applications and data in the cloud. You're familiar with different security tools and techniques.
Like encryption and firewalls?
Exactly. Those are a big part of it. But it also means you're constantly learning and staying up to date on the latest threats and vulnerabilities.
Because the bad guys never sleep.
Nope, they don't.
So you're like a digital detective, always on the lookout for clues.
That's a good way to put it.
Cool. So we've got a pretty clear picture of the skills you need to succeed as a cloud developer. But why are these professionals so sought after? What makes them so valuable to businesses? That's what we'll be exploring in the final part of our deep dive, so stay tuned. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been uncovering what it takes to be a cloud developer, the skills, the responsibilities, you name it. But now let's flip the script and look at it from the business side. Why are companies so eager to hire cloud developers?
Well, think about it. Businesses are facing a ton of pressure these days to innovate, keep up with technology, stay ahead of the competition.
Right. It's a fast-paced world out there.
It is. And cloud developers, they're kind of like the key to unlocking a lot of that potential. They can help businesses modernize their systems, make them more efficient, more scalable, and ultimately more profitable.
So let's dive into the specifics. Our document, What Does a Cloud Developer Do? It highlights some of the reasons why these professionals are so valuable. The first one is transitioning from legacy systems. What's that all about?
A lot of companies are still running on these old, outdated systems.
Yeah, like the ones that were built before the cloud even existed.
Exactly. And those systems, they're often slow, clunky, expensive to maintain.
So they're holding the business back.
They can be, yeah. And that's where cloud developers come in. They can help migrate those systems to the cloud.
Okay, so it's like a digital makeover.
Exactly. You're taking something old and making it new again.
I like it. All right, so then there's building scalable applications. We talked about scalability before, but why is that so important to businesses?
Well, think about a company that's experiencing rapid growth. Their user base is expanding, their data is growing. They need an infrastructure that can keep up.
Right, otherwise they're going to hit a wall.
Exactly. And that's where cloud-based applications come in. They're designed to scale. So as the business grows, the applications can grow with it.
So it's like having an elastic infrastructure.
Yeah, exactly. It can stretch and shrink as needed.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What about enhancing security and compliance? Security is a big deal for any business. So how do cloud developers help with that?
Cloud developers are responsible for building secure applications from the ground up.
Okay.
So they're implementing things like encryption access controls, intrusion detection systems.
So they're like the cybersecurity guardians.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. They're the ones protecting the data, keeping the bad guys out.
Okay. And last but not least, there's optimizing costs.
Mm-hmm.
How do cloud developers help businesses save money?
One of the big benefits of the cloud is that it can be very cost effective.
Yeah.
But you need someone who knows how to manage it properly. And that's where cloud developers come in. They can help businesses choose the right services, configure them correctly, and make sure they're not overspending.
So it's like getting the most bang for your buck.
Exactly.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground today. We've learned what cloud developers do, what skills they need, and why they're so valuable to businesses. It's clear that this is a rapidly growing field with tons of opportunity. So if you're interested in a career in tech, cloud development is definitely worth exploring. There are lots of resources available online, and you could even find boot camps and courses that can help you get started. So what are you waiting for? The cloud is calling. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive, and we'll see you next time.